Welcome back, Disney shills. The moment that you've all been waiting for has finally arrived. The epic conclusion to the journey that we started last month. Welcome to part 2 of ranking the Pixar filmography. And with me today, I have a couple of special guests. Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl. They will be here with us as we rank the top 11 Pixar films. Let's not waste any time. Let's just get right into it. Number 11 is WALLE. To this day, WALLE remains one of the most creative and daring endeavors Pixar has undertaken. WALLE is truly a magnificent film. It is a film that you watch and at the end you are left in disbelief. I cannot believe Pixar just did that. WALLE delivers an incredibly moving message about taking care of our planet and what could happen to us if we fall victim to the trap of this hyper-consumerism that we are unfortunately kind of already engaged with, and the dangers of mega corporations taking over our planet and what that might do to our resources and the overall health of the earth. WALLE is an incredible movie. From the way that it almost plays out as a silent film during the entire first act to the incredible dance sequence in the second act between WALLE and Eve, it's so beautiful. That scene is breathtaking. It almost plays out like a visual song with the two perfectly in sync, and the visuals of the fire extinguisher and the trail left behind by Eve, it's all just so magnificent and beautiful. And WALLE is just such a heartwarming story because you have a protagonist that's so unlikely to get anything done, and yet he manages to be the hero of an incredibly meaningful story. It is absolutely wonderful. Number 10 is Toy Story 3. Whoa, I know what everybody's thinking. Toy Story 3 at number 10? That's a little low. Look, I'm not as high on Toy Story 3 as most people are, but I will say this. Toy Story 3 is a damn good movie, and I think it had the best conclusion to Toy Story that could have possibly existed. Toy Story 3 is a really, really good movie. That said, I think that it relies a little bit too much on both nostalgia and sentimentality because it kind of preyed on the fact that the original viewers were going to college at the same time as Andy, and it used that aspect of the film to just pull on the heartstrings of both the kids and the parents a little bit too much. I think Toy Story 3 reuses some elements from Toy Story 2, and I feel like those reused elements just aren't as good in Toy Story 3, the biggest of which being Lotso Huggin' Bear is basically the same villain as the Prospector, except he's not as interesting and his motivations are questionable at best. Another aspect that I think is really reused is Buzz. They made Buzz speak Spanish, which was a clear attempt to try and capture the brilliance that was Utility Belt Buzz in Toy Story 2, and it just doesn't work. Don't get me wrong, Spanish Buzz has some pretty funny moments in Toy Story 3, but in comparison to Utility Belt Buzz, it's not even close. What I do love about Toy Story 3 is that this movie is about the toys. It is about their relationships with each other and how close they all are and how much they mean to each other. More than just their relationship with Andy, Toy Story 3 is about how these toys depend on each other and how much they thrive off of each other's friendship. And I love that about Toy Story 3, and I think it was something that was really, really lost in Toy Story 4. Nobody is sidelined in this movie, but Woody absolutely shines in Toy Story 3. That said, there are some great moments from some side characters like Mr. Potato Head. He has that hilarious sequence with the tortilla, and I love it. I love every minute of it. And of course, Toy Story 3 has the heartbreaking scene of the incinerator. But let's be real, we all knew that they were going to be saved by the aliens. But it's still a good movie. I love Toy Story 3, but I'm not as high on it as most people are. Number 9 is Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2 is the best Pixar sequel, second to only Toy Story 2. But you guys aren't ready for that discussion. Incredibles 2 is a much better movie than people are willing to give it credit for. I think people were way too hard on this movie because this is the one Pixar sequel that we actually all wanted and had to wait 14 years for, while in the meantime Pixar was actually giving us 2 sequels to Cars that nobody asked for, and a sequel to Finding Nemo that nobody asked for, and a sequel to Monsters, Inc. that nobody asked for. Incredibles 2 is a fantastic movie that perfectly encapsulates the way that the superhero genre and just superhero fandom dominates the pop culture in our current times, and it deconstructs some brilliant tropes. It takes some swipes at the ridiculous dark and gritty trend that for some reason is still going on. And Incredibles 2, I think, actually has a lot to say about superheroes and superhero films in general. And most importantly, I think Incredibles 2 says a lot about how we view superheroes as a society. But I'm not going to get into that too much because I think that that is a whole video in itself that I will make eventually. That said, Incredibles 2 I think is an amazing movie. The animation is stunning, the character work is as beautiful as ever, and I think the story is actually very, very good. I think it's great. Having Elastigirl take the lead and having that gender conversation in a very respectful way, I think was great. It was great to see the roles reversed with Elastigirl in the limelight and Bob really struggling to be a stay-at-home dad. Jack was hilarious, although I do think that raccoon sequence was a little bit out of place, but it was still hilarious, so it doesn't matter. And we got a great scene from Auntie Edna, which, as we all know, you can never have too much Edna in an Incredibles movie. So The Incredibles was a fantastic movie, and Incredibles 2 had a lot riding on it, and I think it delivered. I think it absolutely delivered. It is a great movie. I love it. I will rewatch it time and time again, and I think the Screenslaver is actually an underrated villain. I think her motivations are actually a lot more clear and make more sense than people are willing to admit. For some reason, this is one of those movies that people want to knock down a peg, and I don't understand, because this movie just permeates brilliance. The animation is stunning, the screenplay is great, and of course, being directed by Brad Bird, Incredibles 2, it goes without saying, is fantastically directed. Number 8 is Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming. Finding Nemo is a really sweet movie. I think Finding Nemo was one of those movies where you watched it and you realized that you were really watching something special with what Pixar was doing, because at that point they had this fantastic streak of the first 2 Toy Story films, A Bug's Life, Monsters, Inc. They were really, really on a roll, and I think Finding Nemo is the film that really solidified just how good Pixar is. This was the statement movie. Finding Nemo is a beautiful story about a father trying to find his son and the dangers of overprotective parenting. And it really works. I think Dory is a great side character in this movie as well. I enjoy the hell out of the minor characters such as Bruce the shark and his crew. I think the scene where they treat eating fish like an AA meeting is both clever and hilarious, and the tank crew is just the best. Gil, voiced by Willem Dafoe. I never knew that I needed an animated fish voiced by Willem Dafoe until I watched Finding Nemo, and that is exactly what it gave me. Mwah! Chef's kiss. Thank you. Finding Nemo is a wonderful movie, wonderful message, great story. It's a really well told story, and I think it's a hell of an adventure. And I admit, I am a little biased to movies that take place either on the water or underwater, but watching Finding Nemo, I just get this sense of having this great adventurous feeling, and I think it's great. All the trials and tribulations Marlin and Dory go through, everything from the sharks to the forest of jellyfish to the East Australian current. There are so many memorable moments in Finding Nemo. It is an iconic movie. It's a well-made movie, and most importantly, it is a well-told story, which is what Pixar is about. Number 7 is Coco. Man, what a good movie. This movie is so recent and yet so good. Coco is the movie that kind of broke the string of Pixar sequels, and I cannot imagine a better movie to have broken that streak, because Coco is not only original, but it is beautiful, it is entertaining, and it is inspiring. Coco is a magnificent film. If you are Hispanic, I do not see how you cannot relate to this movie in any way, shape, or form. I came away from this movie with so many emotions. I took so many things away from this movie. Growing up as a Hispanic American, I completely understood where this movie was coming from, with trying to push this dichotomy of family is just the most important thing in the world, and sometimes this idea of family can actually hold you back from pursuing your own interests and dreams. And I really, really empathize with that. I really empathize with Miguel as a character. I thought he was an interesting character, and I thought the themes in Coco were just really resonant. I thought they were really important, and wow, the Land of the Dead. Talk about creativity. That whole set piece is magnificent. It's so interesting to look at. It's so visually captivating. And from the moment Miguel crosses that bridge and we get that big sweeping wide shot, it's just breathtaking. It's incredible. Both from a design standpoint and an animation standpoint, it's a true technical achievement. And of course, you can't talk about Coco without talking about the kick-ass music, Poco Loco. Man, what a fantastic song. I remember a couple years ago, I went to Disneyland, and during the fireworks display, they played Poco Loco, and I was there belting it out, no shame, even though I can't sing to save my life. Coco is a great movie about music, about family, about dreams, and it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. It is so good, and quite frankly, I am surprised that a movie this recent can be so high on this list, but that is how good Coco is. It deserves this spot. It earned this spot. Number 6 is Monsters, Inc. Monsters, Inc. is a movie that everybody thinks of when they think of Pixar. It is a classic Pixar movie. I think it's unbelievably creative, the way that they made this world with monsters and flipped kind of everything in the human world into something that's kind of either disgusting or scary. Instead of deodorant, they have odorant. Their crosswalks say stalk instead of walk. It's the little things like that that make this movie so brilliant and shows how much care was put into this movie, because it's the attention to details that people really feel rewarded by. And Monsters, Inc. is just incredibly creative, because you think about this notion of Scream serving as a power source for this world, and the fact that these monsters are essentially like athletes. Sully is a star because he's one of the best scarers, and Randall is kind of like this second fiddle. He is the Peyton Manning to Sully's Tom Brady, and it's just so creative. It's so cool to see, and the fact that these doors lead to all these different worlds and settings is so cool, especially when it culminates in that ridiculous yet fantastic chase at the end, where they just go through all these different doors and they go through these different scenes and settings, and it's just so cool. It's riveting. I love every minute of it. And of course, Monsters Inc. has some fantastic voice talent with John Goodman, Billy Crystal, Steve Buscemi. It's all there. Monsters Inc. has it all. It is a great Pixar movie. It is a well-told story, and it's unbelievably creative. You know, I think Monsters Inc. is a really, really good movie, and you know, I wish I could rank it higher, but somehow Pixar has better movies than this. Number 5, Toy Story. It is really hard to rank the first Toy Story because Toy Story is a revolutionary film. This movie was huge for computer animation. This was basically the Snow White of computer animation. This movie marked an incredible technical achievement, but it was also a fantastic storytelling achievement. The fact that Pixar created this incredibly tangible and breathable world and made it on a scale that we felt every inch of it. The perspective of the toys, everything seems so massive, from Andy's room to Sid's room to the gas station scene to Pizza Planet. Everything about Toy Story is just the epitome of creativity and great storytelling. Toy Story is unbelievably well written. It has 2 of the best animated characters in history in Woody and Buzz Lightyear. You have Woody, who is a logical guy. He is a toy. He knows that, and he wants nothing more than to have the love of his kid Andy. And then along comes Buzz, who is clearly delusional. He thinks he's a real space ranger. He thinks he's above the toy thing. He thinks he's gonna save the galaxy. And just the way that Buzz and Woody are set up as opposing forces is so brilliant, because Toy Story, yes, it is a kids movie, but I think there's so much to chew on between the dynamic with these 2 characters that I think it really, really transcends that kind of age demographic. Toy Story is a phenomenal film that anyone can enjoy. It's made for kids, but I think it absolutely has so much nuance that it can be enjoyed by adults without question. Woody and Buzz are so philosophically and diametrically opposed that it makes them the perfect candidates to end up as best friends. Because of course they do, right? But I think the journey that both of them undergo throughout this movie is really incredible. Woody's character arc of realizing that he doesn't have to be the favorite, that there's room for other toys, that there's room for other people in his heart, is, I think, really moving. And of course, Buzz's realization that he is a toy, that he is not special, but he is at the same time, because Andy loves him, because he's a cool toy. I think that's just a really, really unique message. I think that's just such a great story. Toy Story is such a special movie. It's something that you can revisit time and time again because it's timeless. What John Lasseter and Pixar did with Toy Story cannot be stressed enough. This movie is so significant. It is unbelievable. And I am so glad that this movie exists, because I remember watching this movie over and over as a child, just blown away by what this movie was able to accomplish. It made me feel like I was a part of that world, and I was so attached to these characters. And you really can't ask for much more from a movie. That is a well-told story. Number 4 is Ratatouille. Ratatouille, wow, what a picture. What a picture. Ratatouille is, I think, one of the most underrated Pixar films because it came out during a rather strange time during the Disney-Pixar merger after Disney purchased Pixar. But, wow, Brad Bird just... I think Brad Bird is probably the most gifted director that Pixar has on deck because his movies never fail to disappoint. I think Ratatouille has a tremendous message of anyone can be an artist. Anyone can be an artist. And I think that is so moving, especially to a guy like me. But I think the character work done in Ratatouille is really good as well between Remy. I mean, it is just truly a really, really moving movie about, ambition, dreams, freedom. Ratatouille, I understand that there is a little bit of a question about whether or not the movie contains the philosophy of objectivism, and I think it does to some extent, but I think that even so, Ratatouille is a pretty great movie because ultimately, when you feel like you were capable of doing something, you want nothing more than to do that one thing that really drives you. And you have to do it because you know it's your one thing. And I think Ratatouille does such a good job of conveying that with Remy and being a chef. It's so moving, it's so resonant, and of course, it is very, very heartfelt because, of course, sometimes in the pursuit of your dreams, you're going to lose sight of things, and you may even mess things up with people that you care about in your life, and Ratatouille is not afraid to go there. And it ultimately shows that you can lose things in pursuit of your ultimate ambition, but Ratatouille is just such a good movie that it's hard for me to fault it for any sort of philosophy that I might disagree with. Special people are supposed to be allowed to do special things. They can't be held down by mediocre people. I get it, but I really don't think that's what Ratatouille is saying. I think what Ratatouille is saying is that anybody can be special. I truly believe that is the message of this movie, and I think that's a wonderful message to send. Number 3 is Inside Out. Inside Out is far from the first movie to personify emotions as characters, but I don't think it has ever been done this creatively. These characters are so interesting and so well written. Joy is a fantastic character, and so is Sadness. Amy Poehler delivers an incredible vocal performance as Joy. It is so, so good. I cannot stress that enough. It is so good. But the thing I love about Inside Out, apart from the fact that it constructs the brain of a human being into such a creative and imaginative world, is the fact that Inside Out tackles these issues of emotions and the complexity of these emotions. You cannot have sadness without happiness, and you cannot have happiness without sadness. These two emotions, while they seem to be opposites, they cannot exist without each other. They are completely codependent on each other. And I think the scene where Riley is crying in her parents' arms and she still feels that glimmer of joy is just one of the most beautiful scenes in animation history, because it's so true. I have been in that position before where you were just absolutely crushed, you were devastated, but at the same time you were happy that you have somebody that cares for you, that loves you. And Inside Out deals with these issues so, so well. And the fact that it is able to take such serious subject matter and translate it into a kids movie, I think is fantastic. But that is what Pixar does. They take this weighty material and they make it accessible for kids while also being nuanced enough for adults to enjoy and just openly weep in front of their children. Inside Out is a beautiful movie. It's creative, and wow, Bing Bong's death is one of the saddest deaths in the Disney pantheon, in my opinion. I think it's absolutely devastating. But Inside Out is a great movie. I think it sends a great message. It has really important and universal themes that apply to all of us. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Number 2 is Toy Story 2. The best Toy Story movie is Toy Story 2. I'm not going to hear any other opinions. Don't argue with me about that. Toy Story 2 is a phenomenal motion picture. This movie is brilliant from start to finish. It is absolutely stunning. Not just in terms of its story, but animation, character work, direction, writing. Everything about Toy Story 2 is damn near perfect, and I love this movie to death. This movie takes everything great about Toy Story and it amplifies it up times 10, and it is just absolutely fantastic to watch. Wow, Toy Story 2, I cannot stress enough how perfect of a sequel this is, because Toy Story 2 is the rare sequel that exists as a standalone, self-sufficient, succinct story that doesn't depend on pre-existing knowledge of the movie that came before it to work. You can watch Toy Story 2 without ever having seen the first one and still enjoy Toy Story 2. That said, if you watch the first Toy Story and then watch Toy Story 2, the experience is that much better for it. Toy Story 2 is the ultimate sequel because it works in every way imaginable. Woody's character arc is absolutely phenomenal. He goes from being this stubborn, arrogant, I must be the favorite toy, to I realize that there is room for other toys in my life, in Andy's life, in Toy Story 1, to becoming disillusioned and becoming influenced by these outside characters in Toy Story 2 with the Prospector, Jessie, and Bullseye. And he undergoes this change where he realizes that, you know what, Andy does not want me forever. But wait a minute, and this is the single greatest thing about Toy Story 2, in my opinion. You have not one, but 2 Buzz Lightyears. You have the real Buzz, and then you have Utility Belt Buzz. Not only is Utility Belt Buzz the most hilarious character in the Pixar filmography, but Utility Belt Buzz serves as a perfect contrast to the real Buzz, because it allows Buzz to see how ridiculous and delusional he was in the first film, and he even acknowledges this with the line of dialogue. But Utility Belt Buzz is the perfect mirror to our Buzz Lightyear, because it shows how much Buzz has grown and how much he has matured, and Utility Belt Buzz is the driving force for what ultimately leads Buzz to tell Woody that he is being ridiculous, that he has to go home with them because he is a toy. He is not something to be on display at a museum for the end of time. And it is Buzz that helps Woody realize that, yes, Andy may grow up someday and not need him, but he museum for the end of time. And it is Buzz that helps Woody realize that, yes, Andy may grow up someday and not need him, but he would not miss it for the world. And that is so beautiful, because in the first movie, it's Woody that's trying to deliver this message to Buzz, and in the sequel, Buzz is the one that has grown so much as a character, as a person, that he has to snap Woody back into reality in Toy Story 2, and it is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. And of course you have all these hilarious pop culture references throughout the movie, mostly to Star Wars, between Utility Belt Buzz and Zurg. That interaction is just fantastic. Utility Belt Buzz is so funny. He's so good. Tim Allen kind of playing this dual role with the real Buzz and this delusional Buzz is just fantastic. And of course, the cold open to Toy Story 2. Wow. Talk about opening your movie up in bravura. Like, you open up with this fantastic scene that's not only beautifully animated, but it's so captivating because you were just wondering the entire time, what is happening? Buzz is infiltrating this fortress, he's fighting Zurg, and it's like this super serious fight, and it's just amazing. And then you realize it's a video game, and you know, it's everything about this movie. It's more adventurous. You get this grand journey from Andy's house to Big Al's. You get Al's Toy Barn, where you meet hilarious side characters like Barbie, and you, of course, are introduced to Jesse and Bullseye, and you have the Prospector, who is a much better villain than Lotso. He has real motivation, and let's be real, guys, he is the inspiration for Lotso. Lotso is just the Prospector, but less interesting. The Prospector is better, and he's the original. He's the OG. This movie is so good. And lastly, Toy Story 2, let me just point this out. Bullseye is so fast that he catches up to a plane. What kind of toy horse is so fast that they can catch up to a plane? This movie is magnificent. Toy Story 2 is a masterpiece, and it is the best Toy Story movie. It is exactly how sequels should work. It works on every single level. Animation, story, characters, writing, direction, design. It is beautiful. Pixar, wow. Why did you do this to me? Because Toy Story 2 is so good, it makes me yell like this. And here we've arrived at the #1 spot, ladies and gentlemen. Disney shills. You knew this was coming. You knew this was coming. If you know me at all, you know there was no other movie that could have earned this spot. #1 is The Incredibles, the best Pixar film ever made. This movie is unbelievable. I cannot believe that this movie exists. The Incredibles is everything right about cinema. The Incredibles transcends animation. It transcends cinema. It transcends storytelling. It is perfect. The Incredibles is a perfect movie. It works on every single level. Character writing, animation, direction, design, writing. It is just so, so good that it makes me so mad. Why is The Incredibles so good? I love that this movie exists. This movie is so brilliant on every level. The Incredibles is the ultimate deconstruction of superhero films. The Incredibles was ahead of its time. Completely ahead of its time, and nobody wants to acknowledge that. We are currently living in the golden age of superhero films, and The Incredibles came out in 2004, and it did what it did. It took superheroes and dropped them in the real world and said they would not work. They would be problematic. Not only would they abuse their power, but there would be collateral damage. There would be weird creeps abusing their power. And most importantly, what The Incredibles did is it showed that if superheroes were real, it would birth supervillains. The very existence of superheroes incites conflict, and that is exactly what The Incredibles does. The Incredibles is an unbelievable movie. I cannot believe that this movie was this great when it was, because the fact is, it didn't have all of these movies to take inspiration from, in the sense that how did it know to deconstruct all of these genre tropes and storytelling conventions before superhero films even dominated the pop cultural conversation? Superhero movies are the biggest thing on the planet, and The Incredibles manages to take everything about them and strip them down to the bare bones and ask the questions that need to be asked. The Incredibles is so, so good. From everything. You have a truly, truly phenomenal vocal performance in Bob Parr. I mean, wow. talk about one of the most memorable performances in a film by Craig T. Nelson, because he is so good as Mr. Incredible. He is just so perfect at capturing that disillusioned character. In the beginning of the film, he's just tired of this mundane, boring, repetitive life, and then he finds this new life when he's offered the chance to be a super again, and it's so good. Holly Hunter as Elastigirl, pitch perfect, the perfect maternal presence. She's reasonable, she's logical, she's calm, she's collected. It's absolutely wonderful to see. Sam freaking Jackson as Frozone with the iconic moment of, "Honey, where is my super suit?" Who doesn't think of that when they think of The Incredibles? Because The Incredibles is so good. The Incredibles has so many things about it that just honestly are really difficult to fathom, because this movie is so well constructed and put together. I mean, think about this movie. Like, you really have to sit down and think about how good The Incredibles actually is, because I can't figure it out sometimes. The Incredibles is a movie that just starts off giving us this world that's full of supers. It's completely normal, and then we get this first act that's completely different in terms of tone and character. They're living in our world, and there are no supers. The government has shut them down, and then everything is kind of turned on its head, and we get this amazing adventure to Nomanison Island, which, by the way, if you didn't catch that, Nomanison Island, no man is an island, no man is all-powerful. Wow. I mean, talk about the little things in this movie. It is all there. And then you have just these fantastic individual character moments from Violet creating that force field to stop Dash from getting shot, to Dash running on water. Oh my gosh, there's just so much in this movie that's so memorable. It's so perfect. Everything about The Incredibles is so good. I mean, the themes that are present in this movie. This is really... The Incredibles is actually a family drama. It's about a family working out their issues and learning to work together as a family. It's just that they happen to be superheroes. And it's beautiful. This is a family drama in the guise of a superhero film. It's not a superhero film. The Incredibles does so many things. It is everything that you could ask for and more. I do not know how much more I can praise this movie because it's so good. And of course you have Edna. What an iconic character. From the minute people saw her, she was instantly deemed iconic. And that's because she is. Pixar just totally outdid themselves with this one. It is absolutely unbelievable. I don't understand. Syndrome is one of the most interesting and complex villains I've ever seen. This guy is only a supervillain because he was created by Mr. Incredible. The rejection and pain he felt from Mr. Incredible as a child caused him to turn around and make himself into a supervillain. He transformed himself into something more, into something evil, to something sinister. And his plan is brilliant. If he's going to make everyone a superhero, it's true. Nobody is a superhero. And again, The Incredibles kind of tackles this idea of objectivism. Because if everyone is special, if everyone is a super, then nobody is special. Nobody is a super because they will eat each other. And it's kind of that same idea in The Incredibles that's present in Ratatouille, is that, you know what, maybe you are special, but you have to prove it. You have to work for it. And it's just, it's unbelievable. Syndrome is such a good villain. He's a better villain than most villains in comic book films. There's maybe like 3 Marvel villains that are better than Syndrome. DC has no villain that's better than Syndrome, except for Heath Ledger's Joker. I mean, Syndrome is such a good villain. Like, he is the perfect opposition to Mr. Incredible. I mean, his past comes back to haunt him. And it's not a test of strength. It is a test of ideology. This movie is a battle of ideology. And man, that is what makes a good film. A good film is not about punching and action. It's about the characters and what drives them. And that's exactly what The Incredibles is. This is a battle of ideology taking place. Syndrome and his absolute hatred for supers, and Bob Parr and Elastigirl with their faith in humanity, but also their desire to save others with their gifts because it's the only way they know how, and they're put in this difficult position. But Syndrome ultimately drives them to a place to where they are allowed to do these things. And it's just so incredible, no pun intended, to watch unfold. The Incredibles is a masterpiece. It is exactly how visual storytelling works. Everything about The Incredibles is great. It all works. I cannot think of a single thing that can be levied against this film as a criticism, because criticism against The Incredibles just doesn't exist. This is a bulletproof film. It is absolutely phenomenal. Pixar reached the peak of the mountain. They are an incredible studio, but The Incredibles is an absolute masterpiece. It is an absolute perfect example of filmmaking. So there you have it. My complete ranking of the Pixar filmography. Whether or not we'll actually get to watch Soul this year remains to be seen. I doubt it, but we'll see. Either way, I really look forward to its release, and this was really hard to do. I have to admit, this was really hard to do, especially once you start getting to those movies that are even, like, I would say like 13 and up. It's really hard once you get to that position, because the bottom line is all of these movies are good in their own way. Because the fact is, Pixar's worst is better than most studios' average. That's how good Pixar is. They are pretty much unparalleled when it comes to storytelling that is accessible to kids, but weighty enough for adults. I mean, Pixar has a reputation for making parents cry in front of their children, and it's not without reason. It's because their movies are just that good. They speak to people of all ages. They speak to everyone. Pixar is just absolutely wonderful for the entertainment industry. I don't know what else to say. I mean, the bottom line is all of these movies are trying to do something unique and special. And yes, some of them are better than others. But Pixar is never a studio that's just going to phone it in. They never make a movie just to make it. They make a movie because they believe in the story that they're telling. And I think that is something that is so great. I think that's something that all of Hollywood needs to take to heart. But there you have it. That is my ranking of the Pixar filmography. If you would like to tell me how wrong I am, feel free to do so and comment below. Otherwise, like, share, and subscribe, and all that YouTube jargon for the algorithm, because we're all at the mercy of it. So you might as well engage in those activities. Thank you for watching, everybody. May your heart be your guiding key.